Iron Dome is a missile defense system developed by Israel. The next evolution of this is said to be the Iron Beam defense system. Iron Beam is a weapon system powered by laser light. Currently, this system is still undergoing testing phase. In reality, a laser in itself is not a weapon. It is a device that emits a very specific type of light. The first laser was invented in 1960. Soon after that, many science fiction films featured laser-powered weapons, creating the popular image of lasers as futuristic weapons. Interestingly, the so-called future mentioned in those movies has come and gone, and yet fully operational laser weapons are still not in widespread use. Today, lasers have become an integral part of our everyday lives. Many of us use laser-powered devices at home. DVD players, laser pointers, laser printers, and barcode scanners at the supermarket all rely on lasers. Even iPhone's Face ID and LiDAR scanner systems use laser technology. These are low-power lasers. However, there are also high-power lasers that can generate temperatures even hotter than the core of the sun. In fact, such lasers have already been used to achieve artificial fusion reactions here on Earth. With all these advancements, you might wonder why laser-powered weapons are still in the testing phase. What lasers are, how do they work, what makes the light they produce so special, and why using them as weapons poses so many challenges. Let us explore all of this in this video. Hi friends, welcome to a new episode of Science Simplified for All. The word laser is actually an acronym. It stands for Light Amplification by Stimulated Emission of Radiation. This single phrase tells us exactly what a laser is. The concept of stimulated emission was proposed by Albert Einstein in 1917, but it took many more years to turn this theory into a practical device. What makes laser light so special? Let us first explore that. We usually think of lasers as a powerful light source with a strong beam that can travel great distances without spreading out too much. But there are many other light sources, like floodlights, that are also very powerful. Similarly, the beam from a flashlight, a circus searchlight, or a lighthouse can travel quite far without spreading much. In fact, light itself has no limit on how far it can travel unless it is blocked by something. So, what makes laser light truly unique? Laser light has three special properties. It is monochromatic, collimated, and coherent. These terms may sound complicated, but they are easy to understand. When we say laser light is monochromatic, it means that it consists of a single color, or more precisely, a single wavelength of light. As you may know, light is an electromagnetic wave, and like all waves, it has a property called wavelength. Each color of light corresponds to a different wavelength. In school, we learn that sunlight has 7 colors, but in reality, it contains countless shades. This image shows all the colors in sunlight that belong to the visible spectrum. Each shade in the image corresponds to a different wavelength. You can see that even within a single color like red, there are many different shades, each with its own wavelength. Most light sources we encounter in daily life emit a mix of different wavelengths. Even when we use filters to create colored light, like red or green, the light still contains multiple shades of those colors. But with a laser, almost all the light is emitted at a single wavelength. For example, any light with a wavelength between 620 and 750 nanometers is identified as red light. However, a red laser pointer typically emits light at a wavelength of 650 nanometers. This means all the light coming out of that laser is exactly 650 nanometers, with only a slight variation of 1 or 2 nanometers. This is what we mean when we say laser light is monochromatic. Next, laser light is collimated, which means that all the light rays travel in the same direction, perfectly parallel to each other. Most light sources emit light in all directions. We can focus such light into a specific direction using parabolic reflectors, as in the case of car headlights and flashlights. Even lenses can make light rays somewhat parallel, but with these methods, the light rays can never be perfectly parallel and eventually spread out as they travel farther. Laser light, on the other hand, is highly collimated, meaning its rays stay nearly parallel even over long distances. For example, if a laser beam is aimed at the Moon, which is 384,000 kilometers away from Earth, it will spread very little. In fact, scientists use this property to measure the exact distance to the Moon by timing how long it takes for a laser beam to reflect off mirrors placed on the lunar surface and return to Earth. Another feature of laser light is that it is coherent. We mentioned earlier that light consists of electromagnetic waves. Many such waves are emitted from a light source at the same time. The light coming from a torch is shown here. It consists of a mix of waves of many different wavelengths. Even if the torch emitted light of a single wavelength, the timing of the waves would not be synchronized. This means the peaks and troughs of the waves would not be in the same position, meaning the waves are out of phase. In simple terms, none of these waves are synchronized with each other. In laser light, however, all the waves are perfectly synchronized. The phase of all the waves is the same, meaning the peaks and troughs of the waves align perfectly. This type of light is called coherent light. One of the reasons laser light can travel long distances while remaining collimated is due to this perfect alignment of the waves. Without coherence, diffraction would cause the light rays to spread out much more. Now, let us see how a laser produces light. We are all familiar with how regular light is made. Today, there are many different ways to produce light. The first method is by heating an object until it becomes so hot that it emits light. This is what happens with fire and in old filament light bulbs. The light coming from the sun is also generated by heat. The main problem with light produced by heat is that it contains many different wavelengths, meaning it is not monochromatic. The second method of producing light is by exciting the atoms of specific elements. This means raising the electrons in those atoms to higher energy levels. However, electrons cannot stay in these excited states for long. They naturally return to their original lower energy state. When this happens, the extra energy the electrons had is released as light. This process is called spontaneous emission. There are several ways to excite atoms. They can be excited by heat, or electric current, or even light. The light produced in this way usually do not have many different wavelengths. Instead, such light has very specific wavelengths. In this method, by selecting the right elements, we can even produce light of a single wavelength, which is necessary for creating monochromatic light, as in a laser. Light is made up of tiny energy particles called photons. During spontaneous emission, when a single electron returns to its normal state, a single photon of light is emitted. When many electrons undergo this process continuously, we get a continuous flow of light. The photons, thus produced by spontaneous emission, travel in random directions. They are not aligned in parallel. Also, since each photon is emitted at a different time, they are not synchronized, or they are not in phase. This means that while the light produced by this method might be monochromatic, but it is neither collimated nor coherent. That is why we have to use stimulated emission instead of spontaneous emission as mentioned in the acronym of laser. Spontaneous emission refers to the natural release of a photon when an electron in an excited state returns to its normal state. However, if another photon passes close to an electron that is already in an excited state, the passing photon can induce the electron to release a photon and return to its lower energy state. This process is called stimulated emission. What makes stimulated emission special is that the newly emitted photon will have the same direction, wavelength, and phase as the original photon that triggered it. In a way, you can think of stimulated emission as a photon photocopier. a process that allows one photon to create another photon that is an exact copy of itself. Now, let us see how a laser works. First, we take a small cylinder made of a material capable of stimulated emission. This could be a rod made from ruby crystal, a cylindrical tube filled with gas, or a diode made from a special type of semiconductor. Depending on the material used, the excitation method used to excite the atoms changes. Both flat ends of the cylinder are fitted with perfectly parallel mirrors. To excite the atoms inside this cylinder, energy is supplied either in the form of electric current or light. This process is called pumping. The laser gains the energy it needs to emit light through this pumping process. After excitation, the atoms inside the material initially emit photons through spontaneous emission. These photons travel in all directions. Many of them escape through the sides of the cylinder. However, the photons that are perfectly aligned perpendicular to the two mirrors will be reflected back to the cylinder. That means only the photons that are aligned to the axis of the cylinder will remain inside the cylinder. Since the mirrors are parallel, this light reflects multiple times, traveling back and forth through the material. With each pass, these photons trigger more atoms to undergo stimulated emission, creating more photons inside the cylinder. Since these photons are formed by stimulated emission, they will be identical in direction and phase to the ones already bouncing between the mirrors. As pumping continues, more electrons become excited, leading to more stimulated emissions. Eventually, a point is reached where there are more excited atoms than atoms in their normal state. This is known as population inversion. At this stage, most of the excited atoms will be releasing photons through stimulated emission, amplifying the light within the cylinder. But for the laser to function, we need to allow some of these photons to escape the cylinder as a beam of light. This is done in two possible ways. Either one of the mirrors will be partially transparent, letting a small portion of the photons to come out through that, or one of the mirrors will have a small hole through which the photons come out. Once the photons escape, the light that comes out of the cylinder will be monochromatic, collimated, and coherent. A beam of light that has only one color, with parallel rays and perfectly synchronized waves. This is the working principle of a laser. We know that lasers have many extensive uses, and they are present in various aspects of our daily lives. But one question that often arises is, despite all these advancements, why haven't lasers been fully developed into weapons yet? There are three main types of weapons commonly used: kinetic energy weapons, explosive weapons, and directed energy weapons. Of course, there are other types of weapons, but these are the primary categories. Kinetic energy weapons cause damage through the kinetic energy of a fast-moving object. A prime example of this is a bullet fired from a gun. Another example is the electromagnetic railgun, which uses similar principles. Explosive weapons cause damage through an explosion. All types of bombs fall under this category. Many weapons, such as rockets, missiles, and mortars, combine both kinetic energy and explosive damage. But lasers fall into the category of directed energy weapons. These weapons cause damage by focusing a large amount of energy onto a single point. In ancient times, it is said that Archimedes attempted to burn enemy ships by concentrating sunlight with mirrors. While it is debatable how effective that was, the same concept is applied in laser weapons today. The key advantage of kinetic energy and explosive weapons is that they release their energy in a very short amount of time. For example, in the case of explosive weapons, all the energy is released in just a few milliseconds, resulting in an explosion that causes damage. Let us take the L16 81mm mortar as an example. This weapon, though not particularly large, causes a small explosion that releases around 2.8 megajoules of energy at its target. But this energy is released in just about a millisecond. So if we calculate its power output, it will be around 2,800 megawatts. It is this instantaneous release of energy that causes damage. By comparison, the most powerful laser weapon available today has only a power output of around 500 kilowatts, or just half a megawatt. Such a laser weapon would need 6 full seconds to deliver the same energy that the L-16 mortar releases in a millisecond. This means a laser weapon, as powerful as it may be, cannot cause the kind of instantaneous damage that an explosive weapon does. In the movies, we see lasers causing massive explosions. But to do that in reality, we would require a laser whose power is in the range of thousands of gigawatts. Such a laser would need an entire power plant to operate. Moreover, the efficiency of current laser weapons is only around 50%. This means only half of the energy used to power the laser is converted into light. The remaining energy is lost as heat. Managing this excess heat is a significant challenge. If not removed, this heat can cause damage to the laser system. This is one of the main barriers in creating more powerful lasers. Plus, it is difficult to make these powerful lasers compact enough to fit onto ships, aircraft, or tanks. That is why it has taken so long to develop laser weapons. However, laser weapons do have some unique advantages. Since they use light, they operate at the speed of light, meaning there is no delay between firing and the laser beam reaching its target. Once the target is locked, it is highly unlikely to miss. While lasers may not cause explosive damage, they can still be very effective in other ways. For instance, imagine an enemy drone approaching. Most drones rely on cameras for navigation. A laser aimed at the camera could blind or disorient the drone, even with relatively low power. If a higher powered laser is used, it could even burn out the camera or damage the drone's wings, rendering it useless. Although laser weapons cannot cause explosions like in the movies, they can produce extremely high temperatures. A 500 kilowatt laser focused on a target can melt thick steel plates, damaging anything inside. If the target contains explosives, the laser could potentially ignite them, causing the explosion indirectly. Israel's ion beam laser system, for example, operates at 150 kilowatts. It can be used to punch holes in rockets, damaging the detonators and neutralizing them. If the casing of the explosive inside the missile is thin, the laser might even penetrate it and detonate the explosive in midair. The fact that laser weapons do not cause explosive damage can also be an advantage. They can target a specific object without causing harm to nearby people or structures. But the biggest advantage of laser weapons is their cost-effectiveness. Each missile fired by Israel's Iron Dome defense system costs anything between $30,000 to $80,000, whereas the rockets they intercept cost only around $1,000. This creates a huge disparity in cost. Additionally, missile systems take time to reload. So, when faced with a large number of incoming rockets, the Iron Dome could be overwhelmed. This is where the ion beam comes in. Although the equipment for the laser system is expensive, each shot fired costs just $3 or $4, and there is no limit to the number of shots you can fire as long as there is a sufficient power source, so there is no reloading time. This is why efforts to deploy the ion beam defense system have accelerated. Laser weapons will never fully replace conventional weapons, but they can overcome some of the limitations of traditional systems. Laser technology has countless other applications in our daily lives. It is unfortunate that it is being developed for warfare, but if we look at history of mankind, this has often been the case with new technologies. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment. Your support motivates me to create more content. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated with new uploads. Thank you.